Hello and welcome to Away We Sew, a fully lined lapped zipper. It's gorgeous. This is one of my white whale projects. I've always tried to have a beautiful lapped zipper, but with a lining, and I could never figure out how to get all of those layers to like work together up at the top here and still, have a lap. So if you've tried this, you probably know what I'm talking about. Maybe you've just resorted to hand stitching that, or just given up entirely. Well, we're here to show you how to do this. You're going to get this beautiful lap. You're going to have open seams, and at least on the top, the lining is actually off to one side, which I prefer for lining. And again, we're going to show you all of these beautiful techniques to get that nice boxed corner on the lining side and that even top stitching. And look at the top, it's so perfectly even across the top. And there's a little room for a hook and eye there. So this is Leah, and we are here to show you a way we sew a lapped zipper with a lining. We'll see you here soon. Okay, welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit about the supplies that are needed for this kit. The most important thing is to have a zipper foot. Now this is for my FOF 7570, or pretty standard FOF foot. Hopefully your foot looks something like this. What we need to do is have the needle be able to adjust versus the foot. If you don't have an adjustable needle, then you need an adjustable foot. So give me a call or contact me on the website, and I can give you a little more information about that. But most of you, I believe, should have a needle that you can adjust, and that will help you gauge where your stitching is going to be. And speaking of the gauge, we've included a gauge. I'm going to talk a lot more about this in just a minute, but in the meantime, I want to talk a bit more about the zipper. So the zipper itself, this is kind of a standard dress zipper. It's I believe a YKK zipper. The opening of the zipper is measured from the top of the stop to the bottom of the stop. So that gives you the size of your zipper, not the tape. The tape can vary slightly. The opening of your garment is going to be a ½ inch longer than the zipper. So if you know the opening of your garment and you're trying to find a zipper to fit it, you need a zipper that is a ½ inch smaller. Or if you have a zipper lying around and you don't know how to make sure that that's going to fit into your garment, just add a ½ inch to the opening of your garment. Other things to note: the way the zipper is manufactured is that it's pretty clever. They've sort of assumed you're going to have a 3/8 inch seam allowance that this fits into. So that's what we do. And the reason for that is that gives you, if you have -3/8 inch, then there's just enough left over for your hook and eye. And I'll show you that on the live sample here. So I have a 3/8 inch seam allowance in there, and then a perfect amount of space for my hook and eye. Okay, so that's why we use 3/8 inch seam allowance at the top there. So, and speaking of seam allowances, I'm going to talk a little bit about the shell and the lining. And the shell is simulating your skirt or your shell or your beautiful what's the word I'm looking for, a sheath dress, for instance. And this is the center back seam here. So we have a 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way down the center back seam. I usually do that anyway. It's a place that gets a lot of wear and tear. It's kind of good to have a little extra real estate there. And it's always a great idea to have a 3/4 inch seam allowance anywhere you have a zipper, because it really helps support that zipper opening. So 3/8 inch seam allowance for your shell, and then the lining has also 3/8 inch seam allowance, but we're going to cut away a lot of the lining here around the zipper area. So note that on the there's a side A and a side B, so I also want to talk a little bit about our notation. It can get a little confusing when you say right side up, left side, wrong side, right sides together, what's going on. So what we do is use side A and side B. So side A is the left side is worn, so this would be the correct side of the fabric, the public side of the fabric, the part that you want people to see is the right side. And the left side is side A and the right side is side B. And for the lining, it's the same thing, but it can get a little confusing because if you think about a garment, if you had x-ray vision, if you're looking through the shell, when you open it up, the lining is also the right side. I'll show you the live sample here. So this is the right side of the fabric. When you unzip your zipper, you get in there, you want the right side of the lining as well. So side A corresponds with side A, and the same is true of the zipper side A and side B. So when you're following along in the instructions, just kind of keep that in mind. And finally, I want to talk about back to the gauge. So if you're a knitter, you're familiar with the concept of a gauge. Really, all it's designed to do is to make sure that your sewing machine settings match our settings so that you're going to get the exact stitch width that this method calls for. So when you receive your kit, you'll receive this. What you're going to do is just sit down in front of the machine and you're going to arrange your foot to ride exactly against the edge of the zipper teeth. And once you arrange that, then you want to position your needle so that your stitches are exactly the same as my stitches. And note your machine settings. They are going to differ for seams 1 and 2. So note what your machine settings are for 1 and 2. For my settings in this foot with the faff, my needle is at 0, just in the center, the normal position. For seams 5 and 6, you need to move your needle over a bit to that direction. You see that? See where that needle would be hitting there, where those seams, that seam is? And notice my needle is running, or sorry, my foot is running right against the edge of the zipper teeth. That's what's going to give us that very even line of stitching, both on the top and on the lining side. Okay, so that's very important. So I think we're ready to get sewing. We'll see you here for the first step. Welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit more about preparing your sample and also this sample paper that you've received. This is actually a form of Tyvek. It's called Tyvek 1222A and kind of long story why I use this, but let's just say it involves making a lot of protective equipment, very specialized protective equipment, and I discovered that Tyvek is great for sample making. It's strong, it's sturdy, it acts like fabric. It's a little crinkly at first, but it does actually soften up, and it's, as I said, really strong. So when you're stitching over and over again, you can rip out your seams and it doesn't fray. It's also very accurate, so you'll know, if you are folding right along that fold line, you don't have any distortion that fabric could give you. And it's also cool because there's sort of like a assumption of a grain there, so that can be helpful too to see, what your fabric's doing. Okay, so that's about Tyvek. So to prepare your shell, all you need to do is just cut up the center seam and then also trim along the top here. So that'll give you that 3/8 inch seam allowance at the top. Okay. For the lining, there is a little more going on. Just pay attention. So you're going to actually remove this entire center area here. And as I don't know if I mentioned this in the intro, but the seam allowance that you're trimming off is different for side A and side B. For side A, you're trimming 7/8, so the entire seam allowance, which is in our case 3/4 of an inch plus 1/8 of an inch, gone. And then for side B, you're trimming 1/2 inch away. So if you've already do this, so if you trimmed this. Okay, so you're trimming 1/2 inch away from, it actually starts at 1/4 of an inch above the zipper notch. So not at the zipper notch, you actually need this little area here because that's going to form the bottom cute little fold. So 1/2 inch from side B and 7/8 of an inch from side A gone. And then just snip that little corner there, and that's what's going to give you that like little box that I said. Okay, so now we're ready to start sewing. So see me back here in a few minutes. Bye. All right, we are ready for step number 1. Okay, we are ready for step number 1. Step number 1 is to sew the side A of the zipper to the side A of the lining. So just keep your wits about you. As I said, you want to just make sure you're getting the left and the right side and the right side up and right sides up. So place your lining with the correct side up, lining side A. Make sure you folded under this little cute little section at the bottom, fold line 1A. So it makes a cute little box. Oh, it will make a cute little box. And then we are going to start sewing from the bottom up. And if you think about it, if you take a look at your zipper, it kind of makes sense because there's a metal stop right there. And yeah, we don't want to sew over that, or, we just kind of want to avoid that thing. So that's the boss. So that's going to determine the bottom of your zipper. Now, I know there's a raging debate out there, bottom zipper people versus top zipper people. For me, it depends on the zipper. For a lap zipper, I'm a bottom up kind of gal. So this first seam is sewn kind of upside down. And we've done as much as we can with kind of putting in cues and markers so you know where to place your zipper. So your zipper is facing up on lining side A, which is also facing up. And you're basically looking to align the zipper stop just above the fold, because when you fold this, that's going to actually make that cute little corner there. So we've done as much as we can to put little markings, but they also get hidden up by the zipper. But you should be able to align the bottom of the zipper with the little marking there. And make sure you've checked your gauge. For me, it's just at the needle is just in the center. And I start sewing just above that metal stop, because the metal stop is actually a little wider than the zipper, and it can kind of get a little funky and caught up on your foot. And I like to ignore that thing. So I'm going to start sewing above it. So I don't even back tack at this point. I do try to stop with my needle down. Now, talking about the zipper, you want to apply even pressure along the left-hand side so it's riding right up against your zipper foot. Stitch as far as you can before you hit the, pull. Stop your needle down and only open it up as like the minimum amount that you have to. And then push that zipper piece together again, because you want to be nice and straight up here. You see, even I have it. It screws away a little bit. Okay, that's it for the first step. The other thing you need to do is kind of finger press everything open. So I just flip the zipper under and form that little box. And just make sure it looks pretty. It looks good. Okay. Great, that's it. Next step number 2. I'll see you here in a minute. Step number 2 is to attach lining B to the zipper. And for this, you're going to put right sides together. So the printed side goes together. And again, we're sewing with a 3/4 inch seam allowance. But if you need a pin for this, you're welcome to use a pin. I hardly ever sew with pins, to be honest with you. They just kind of get in the way. And then I realized I did not complete preparation of my sample. So make sure you've cut off that top section there along the red cutting line. It's going to make it a little easier to match these up. So as we talked about in the very beginning in the intro, there's a reason that this zipper is sort of the height, the length that it is in this section. And the very top of this, mine's gotten a little frayed, but should match very closely to the top of your sample, because that's sort of the way the industry assumes that you're going to sew, is with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 inch seam allowance up there. What I do, so I kind of line everything up, I start in about 3/8 of an inch. I don't start right on the edge of this seam allowance, because there's a lot going on and things can shift, and you really want your zipper to be aligned, side A to side B. So stop with my needle down. I take a couple of stitches, open my zipper just a little bit, and keep that pressure, left side pressure. And also I should point out the edge of the tape is riding against the edge of your seam allowance. So go just a little bit farther, don't go too far, and then move your zipper pull out of the way, and then blast on down. Again, pressure this way, and this is going to turn out perfectly even because you're stitching exactly the same distance, because you're using the zipper as your little bumper guard. Now when you get down here, this tab, it's not as secure, so, you know, it might scroll a little bit away from you. So just go a little slow in this area. And all you care about, and I'm a little off, but it's not critical, is that you're keeping at 3/4 of an inch. So even I get off a little bit. Well, let's check our work. Looking good. Sorry for the crinkle noise. So that is done. Our lining is done. We've got this beautiful box pleat. We have this beautiful boxed area. Our seam allowances are pushed to the right. So if this were an actual, you know, garment at this point, you could finish off the seam allowance. I always like to have my linings, seam allowances off to one side anyway. Now we're ready for the next step, which is to sew the shell along the top here. So you're gonna love that step because it makes a nice and smooth transition. And I use that technique for a lot of my zippers, including my invisible zipper. So we'll see you here in a minute. Okay, step 3 is to attach the shell. Let me find my shell. To do this, make sure you've trimmed your seam allowances along the top. Okay. Place shell A right side up. Your lining unit should be like this. You're going to place side A of the lining on top of side A of the shell, right sides together. Match your seam allowances. Now, the very edge of the fabric might not be the seam allowance because it's just the way it goes through the printer. So just make sure those black lines are matched. This is a 3/8 inch seam. Start sewing. And stop when you get close to the zipper because you're going to fold this part over the zipper at this blue guideline. There's a notch there as well. So this is a 3/4 of an inch. This is going to form that lap. And this matches the edge of the zipper tape. So just fold that up, stitch 3/8 inch seam, go to the end, back tack a couple times. Now you're gonna do the second side. So just keep your work under there. You don't need to lift it out or anything. Back to, oops, need to trim off your seam allowance. Okay, get that done. This one you're going to fold at 5/8 of an inch. So if you want to mark that little notch, fold it along the seam line, and you're kind of cheat a little. You're going to fold it even tighter just at the top because you can kind of tell where this sort of dips in. And I've just noticed this helps the next step. So really wrap that one tight around. And all you really care about is that these seams match here. That seam line matches there. And then again, we're just buttoning this thing up right against the other zipper, and that's going to help get over all that bulk. Take a little back tack. Do make sure that everything is super even, and you can tell I'm kind of getting off track a little bit, but there we go. And that's it for that step. You just have to separate. Try not to cut through the fabric if you can. Okay, I'll see you here for the next step. All right, step number 4 is to stitch this tiny little seam down here at the base of your shell. So when we last met, we had just stitched these, the top seam allowances. And what we need to do is fold these right side out and then do the little tiny little seam at the bottom. For folding these, I like to do the pinch, hold, and fold technique. So I kind of fold the finger, and it just makes a really nice fold. At this point, if you're working in fabric, you can go to the iron and just iron that right along the 3/4 inch seam allowance. See that? And maybe my fold could be a little bit better. Shove something up there if you need to, like turner, pair of scissors, whatever you got. Just coax that out a little bit. There we go. And the other side, same thing. fold it over, pinch, pop it out. And this one's easier because you can just kind of pull on the zipper itself. And same thing, I'm going to fold that right along that fold line C. You're almost done. As I said, next thing to do is just stitch this tiny little seam, and that's at 3/4 of an inch. So let's put those together. Get under the machine. 3/4 of an inch. And you're just sewing to the notch. So make sure your notches match. And back tack of the notch. Press your seam open. And I want to point out to you the shell side, which is the lap side, the left of the shell, which is the lap side. That one is at 3/4 of an inch all the way up. See that? So it should be perfect. There's no jog or anything there. It just goes zoop straight down. The right side actually has a little bit of a fold in there, so it's not going to be right at the seam, so you can kind of guide that in just a little bit. You see that? There's going to be a little underlap. So the fold line, we've tried to give you these cues here, is going to match up with the dots at the top. Okay? So your sample should look something like that. The next step is to do the top stitching, and we'll see you here for the final step. All right, step 5 is to do our top stitching. Now refer to your gauge and make sure that you're adjusting your needle. So for mine, I remember I had to adjust it to the left 4 clicks. So check your gauge. And now all we need to do is our top stitching. And you're probably thinking, oh God, I hate the top stitching step. Fear not, this is gonna be fun. So open up your zipper and you just fold the shell back at the top so it looks pretty. And I usually kind of cheat a little bit and favor the shell so that the zipper is sort of tucked underneath just a little bit. And this top section can be a little tricky to stitch, so I say forget about it. I'm not going to stitch there because it can get a little wonky. So I just start a little bit lower. And don't worry if this is like riding right up against the teeth. You can actually kind of pull the teeth out just a little bit, and that can help that little section. But the teeth, I find, get stuck on my presser, on my feed dog teeth, so it just can get a little dicey up there. So just take it easy. There we go. Stop with your needle down. And all you need to do here is same thing. Push, and actually, once you can, close your zipper. You're just pushing right against the left of the zipper, the left of the zipper foot and the right of the zipper are riding against each other. And you can just get that seam, you can get it right, actually quite close to the zipper. It's fine, it doesn't get caught. And look at me, I'm gonna stitch all the way down past the zipper pull to almost to the opening. You see that? Lift the presser foot. Lower the presser foot and take one stitch until you're on that green line. Rotate. And 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. Look at that. You had a beautiful, beautiful L shape there with no bulk. Now this time you just kind of want to, you're doing the same thing. Just kind of squish everything together, so make sure you're not stitching it like that. You really want this blue line to match up with that dotted line. And the same thing, I'm pushing, just riding the rails. They're pushing up against that zipper. I don't really have to even think about it. And once you get close to the top, move your Zipper pull out of the way. Not too far though, that was too far. There's all the way to the top. And you're done. 6 simple seams to a beautiful lapped zipper with a lining. Look at that, nicely done. Top matches right across the top. Back looks almost as perfect as the front. And that is the way we sew a lapped zipper with a lining. Thank you so much. Share your successes. Get a hold of us. We'd love to hear from you. Bye.